Hello, driving intelligence community. Last year, I had a transmission failure in my 10th generation F150 with the 470W transmission. Neutral out after second gear. Turns out it was just a 2.3 accumulator that had failed. Simple enough to replace by itself, but at 260,000 miles, I decided to do a full transmission rebuild myself. I also last year replaced the radiator, which is 2 inches now, instead of the 1 inch from the factory. And since it has a transmission cooler integrated into that, or the transmission lines, I thought that would give me better cooling capacity for the truck. Well, I keep a lot of connection to my engine parameters through my double din head unit that I put in. I'll link that video below. But through Torque Pro, I could see the transmission temperatures were starting to go up. Prior to the rebuild, I was seeing temps in the 180 degree range. But now it was going up to about 195, as you'll see in this picture. And it was starting to make me a little nervous. I was wondering why the transmission temperatures would jump up. Well, there was one other thing I did and one thing I didn't do during that transmission rebuild. I replaced the electrical strap that is in the pan, connects all the solenoids. It has an integrated temperature sensor. And the spec on that might not have been tight as the previous one, which was an OEM. I got that one off of Amazon. Works perfectly fine, but the temperature was different, and I really don't know if that's the problem. But the other issue was that I did not change the transmission cooler, and I should have done that when I rebuilt the transmission, because what I understand, you have a lot of clutch material, a lot of metal that gets pushed through the transmission cooling lines, and some of that could get caught in the transmission cooler. And over this period of time, I've done some research, and it turns out it could reduce efficiency 10 to 20%. So I decided I'm not going to touch the electrical strap right now, but what I did want to do is just the last fail part of the transmission was the cooler. I was going to go ahead and replace it. I found what was supposed to be a direct replacement unit on Amazon. Stay tuned, because it is not a direct replacement. And when that didn't work, then I went a different direction. And you'll see in this video how I resolved making sure that I had an effective transmission cooler. Temperatures are still a little higher, but they are now down quite a bit. So the steady state at normal ambient temperatures is around 169, 170. So it's definitely a drop down. But I'm still seeing temperatures escalate up to about 190. So something else is going on. But at least I know I have a robust transmission cooling system in this truck. So here's what I did to get this done, what the obstacles I ran into, and how I overcame that to get a running vehicle again. Stay tuned. Quick side note while I'm swapping out the cooler. For those wondering what normal transmission fluid temps should look like, I drove my own intelligence and found the following information in Ford's service manuals, owner guides, and Sonax Tech articles. Pause the video and take a screenshot for future reference. Under everyday driving with no load, the 4R70W ATF temps should settle around 160 to 190 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the weather. In cooler ambient temps like 40 degrees, it'll run lower, say 140 to 170 degrees Fahrenheit once warmed up. Moderate days around 70 degrees, you're looking at 160 to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. But in hot summer heat, 90 degrees Fahrenheit or more, it might climb to 180 to 200 degrees Fahrenheit, especially in traffic. If heavy towing, like hauling a trailer over 5,000 pounds, temps can jump to 200 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit during pulls. Short spikes up to 230 to 240 degrees Fahrenheit are okay on hills, but an auxiliary cooler should be added to stay under 200 degrees Fahrenheit for longevity. If temps sustain over 220 degrees Fahrenheit, that's concerning. It speeds up fluid breakdown and wear on clutches and seals. 240 degrees Fahrenheit or higher is a serious problem, and the vehicle should be pulled over to cool down, checked for low fluid or a clogged cooler. Now, with all those details out of the way, let's get back to the install. Now with the grill surround removed, I got a lot more room to get to the bolts on the top side of this transmission cooler. There's one over here, one over there. There's probably one at the bottom I got to get to. So it just makes it easier for me to navigate through there. It was super quick. I think it took me 10 minutes to get that grill surround off. Here's a better view of the bolts holding that on instead of having to guess. There's one on the driver's side, there's the one on the passenger side, and then there's another one, if I can get down here low enough, I get my finger, you can see the head of it right there at the bottom. So just 3 bolts. What I'm gonna do first is get the cooling lines off. In order to release the cooling line, you gotta get in there and push the spring back that holds the flared end of this cooling line in. In order to do that, normally you would use one of these kits, but the flare is so thick, there's no room between the cooling line and the fitting. So I don't think I'm gonna be able to get in there. So I saw a trick where I drove my own intelligence looking online, took a piece of plastic, and I'm gonna try to fit it perfectly to go in there and push the spring back. I've already sprayed some PV Blaster in there to try to make sure that there's no corrosion holding it in place. So we're gonna try this and see if this works. My little trick didn't work, so I loosened up that fitting. Let's zoom in on that. Wrong way. You can see that I just unscrewed it. I couldn't get the spring loosened, so hopefully this is not gonna cause me a problem. It wasn't leaking. So I'm gonna just replace the whole cooler without having to replace the fitting or pull the line off. Just gotta let the fluid drain out of the cooler. Both lines are disconnected. Just gonna let it continue to drain, get everything out of that cooler. Once again, you can see that instead of removing the hose, the spring locked hose or line from the fitting, I just unscrewed the fitting. So it rotated nicely without any problem. I'm praying and crossing my fingers that that's not going to cause a problem when I put everything back together. But you can see there's a bolt on the bottom that I got to remove and the 2 that I showed earlier. This is interesting. So this thing started coming apart. This is actually supposed to be attached. You can see the rivets here. So I guess this thing's so old it just kind of separated itself, and I guess that's another indication that I should have replaced this sooner. So 1 bolt, this whole thing would fall on my face. It's just a word of caution. If your rivets popped also, you're gonna have to hold this from the top while you disconnect that last bolt on the bottom. Then I can get the bracket out that comes with the new cooler. All right, comparing the old cooler to the new cooler, you can see again that this is broken. The rivets gave way. It's a good thing I changed this, because if this last bolt would have given loose, rusted and broken off, then it would have put undue stress on the cooling lines, and who knows if that would have caused a break in the line and the transmission dumped all its transmission fluid, and there goes my new transmission. Interestingly enough, as I look at it, you can probably see it in the video, this one's a little bigger than this one. From this dimension to this dimension, it's about a 1/2 inch bigger. But from this dimension to that dimension, it's a 1/2 inch smaller than the new one. So surface area should be about the same. Let's put the new one in. Before connecting the lines, I wanted to make sure I had some new O-rings on here. Now I had bought new fittings to put on this. They're about $60 for a pair, so I suggest you try to do this my way. Hopefully there won't be any leaks. I don't think I'm gonna have any leaks, but I need to put some new O-rings on this. I had a kit from an air conditioning project, so I'm gonna go ahead and use these. I'll link this if I can find it on Amazon, but I lubed them up with a little transmission fluid, and now I'm gonna reconnect it, and everything should be buttoned up. Amazon part alert. Gotta shut down this operation because the fittings, OEM fittings, the original OEM fittings on this vehicle are not matching up with this cooler I got from Amazon. So I'm gonna link it in the description so you can check it and make sure you're not gonna buy it, because the fitting location here at the bottom is too small for that. So what I've done is I've taken mine to a radiator shop, I had them boil it out, test it. I'm gonna reinstall it after I paint it to prevent corrosion and get back on the road. Boiled out and tested, it's in perfect condition. You can see it's perfectly clean now. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a coating of paint on it just to protect it from any kind of corrosion. And the gloss black should help keep it from collecting dirt. Once I get that done, we'll get it back in. Here's a better look at the problem I ran into. This fitting, where the cooling line comes in, should be able to go in here, and there is definitely a size difference. I don't know how they could have gotten that wrong. It's just pitiful. So this is not going to work. I didn't feel like going out and trying to find a fitting that would work on this side for my F-150, on this side for this cooler. So that's why I've got the other one all painted up now. I'm just going to let it dry, and then I'll install it. And maybe I'll try to figure out sometime in the future, if with this cooler as a backup, if I can find the right fitting that works for this. But again, I'm going to link it below, but do not buy it. This is not a good cooler if you're worried about the fitting size. Interject just a second. Here I am in the junkyard, and I found a cooler off of a lower model or a non-towing F-150. And this fitting here is the proper size for the cooler I had gotten off Amazon. So I'm going to take it off and test it just to see. But maybe these fittings are available that will still work with the flared tubing coming off of the transmission. Just to close out with this fitting I found in the junkyard, it does not work. So this was a waste of time. I don't know what they were trying to size this with, but it doesn't work. So again, huge caution, don't buy. The paint is dried, so it's time to reattach the bracket. I'm going to use some rivets to reattach it. Again, I'll link all the stuff I'm using in the description. Good and sturdy. The original transmission cooler is installed and it looks just as good as a brand new one, and it's boiled out, and guess what? It's OEM, so should do me fine. I'm hoping it'll drop temperatures since it's been boiled out, cleaned out, and gotten all the probably residual material that sloughed off during operation of the transmission over 268,000 miles. After installation, I'm checking the transmission temperature using my Torque Pro app that came with my Atoto double-din unit. It's an S8, and I'll link a video showing the installation of this. But now it's at 169 degrees, which is a good 10 degrees lower than it used to be in just normal steady state operation without towing or without severe heat. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, I was seeing well over 200 degrees, especially when I was towing the MX-5 from Florida through that Florida heat. So this is a huge change. It's much better, obviously. And what I got to do now is just drop the pan and change the fluid. And I'm going to actually send it off to Blackstone to see how the transmission treated the oil, the transmission fluid during that big towing operation. Plus, it's the first change since I personally rebuilt my transmission. So it'll be interesting to see what those results look like. So stay tuned for that. And that's it. Don't forget the thumbs up. I'll see you next time on Driving Intelligence.